of speed, color, drama, and excitement. The American Sports Cavalcade.
When NHRA assigned top alcohol dragsters and top alcohol funny cars their own eliminator category, they assigned them a sportsman designation, and that was entirely accurate. They were all weekend warriors, racing for the sheer fun of it. But as their speeds increase, now to over 230 miles per hour, their elapsed times decrease now in the 5-second zone, fan and sponsor interest soared to where now guys like Winston Funny Car champion Brad Anderson, his rival young Pat Austin, and Bill Barney, I consider full-time professionals. After all, they are racing for a living. And today, they will be the two featured classes in our coverage of the Budweiser Sports Nationals from National Trail Raceway near Columbus, Ohio. All you have to do is look at the face of my buddy Ricky Porter here to tell how hot and how humid it is today in Central Ohio. But the reward for all of us will be the categories we're featuring today always offer the closest side-by-side racing in NHRA championship drag racing. In addition to alcohol funny cars and dragsters, we've got a true sportsman category, that of Super Comp. And to tell us what a Super Comp car is, we have borrowed from NHRA today our resident sportsman expert, Bob Fry. Bob, what is a Super Comp car?
Steve, that's a real good question. Mechanically, Super Comp cars are almost anything you want them to be. Externally, you've got the full-bodied machines, which turned out to be real popular cars in this heads-up 890 category. The full-bodied cars are really making a name for themselves. What a lot of people think might be the most traditional Super Comp car is a rear-engine, big-block Chevy Dragster, 4-barrel carburetor, and gasoline. This is your classic Super Comp machine. Then, of course, there's the new look, the slick, low-rider roadsters that have really been coming on strong and making a name for themselves in Super Comp Eliminator. So Super Comp is really almost anything you want it to be. A lot of people think the wheelbase difference in the cars can make a lot of difference in the race cars when they go to the starting line. The long wheelbase dragsters against the short wheelbase roadsters. One thing that is going to make a difference for all the cars that are racing here this weekend is the weather. And for more on that, we go to Brock Yates.
Well, I'll tell you what, Bob, heat is a major factor here at the Budweiser Sports Nationals. Everybody is being affected by it. In particular, the man beside me, the reigning Winston World Champion in the top alcohol funny cars, went down to defeat in the first round, a major upset for Brad Anderson at the hands of Shad Wheeler. And I'll tell you what, I know you don't make excuses, but this heat, I would think, Brad, at what, 90, 95 degrees, has to have an effect on everybody here.
Oh, it does affect everybody, but, you know, it affects the guy in the other lane just as much as it does you, so you can't complain about the air. We all suffer, but he was just smarter than I was on that run.
Took away, what, 500-600 horsepower, do you think?
Oh, yeah, 4 to 5 at least, yes.
That's a ton, even with a car that has a surplus of horsepower like these woolly automobiles do. But right now, let's go to the starting line for round 2 of Top Alcohol Dragster.
And the first automobile we'll see is one of the toughest in the country. Out of Seminole, Oklahoma, it is Tom Conway. And Conway is in a very fortunate position here in round 2 as he has a bye run. He'd be all by himself. He really can't lose. And that's because last weekend, this same competition was rained out. Some of the drivers were unable to make the long trip back, and it left an odd number of cars in the original 16-car field, so hence the bye run for Conway. But he'll run all out. You can bet on that, Brock.
That's a husband-wife team. You saw Linda, his wife, who acts as the crew chief on this automobile. Tom is an engine builder, and he and Linda bolted together a good one for this race. They qualified at a 6:05, which, considering the heat, Steve, is impressive. And those are not 500 cubic inch engines either.
No, they're not. In fact, Tom Conway has a 437 cubic inch engine. We'll explain later the formula that Linda and Tom have to build to. They also defeated in round number 1 Mike Burns, so he has not been without competition today. These cars weigh a little bit over 2,000 pounds. And how big the engine is determined by what type of engine. With this type of power plant, it works on a kind of a floating weight per cubic inch formula. He can only run 437 inches. That's as big as the engine can be.
Okay, here he goes. Conway going obviously for lane choice, so he's going to stand on the alcohol, as it were. And through the lights at a 6:13, 223 miles an hour. So we'll see whether or not that stands up as far as this competition in the semifinals is concerned. But Tom Conway does advance with an impressive run.
Of course, with the right track and weather conditions, we might even see it today. These cars are capable and have run in the 5-second zone. Here is the machine driven by Earl Datweiler. Just a beautiful, state-of-the-art, if you will, top alcohol dragster. Earl putting a little heat into the motor before he accomplishes the burnout, before he pulls up into the water and spins those huge rear slicks to get him good and hot and put some rubber down on the racetrack. While he's doing that, let's go to the far end of the racetrack, Bob Fry with Tom Conway.
Tom, even on the single run, you ran really well. 6:13, that's a pretty good pace.
Not too bad. I was a little bit worried after they just scraped the track, being the first run, you know, right after they scraped it, but it came around pretty good.
Give you a little extra feeling of confidence the fact there was nobody in the other lane?
Oh, no, we try to run every run, you know, just like we're racing somebody. That's the only way we can learn anything.
What's this air and track conditions doing to your car?
It slowed us down a bit, but we're just glad to get this thing underway and done today.
That's been pretty good to you so far this year, though.
So far, we got 2 more, though.
Well, there's a lot of drivers darn glad that NHRA takes the time to, as Tom said, scrape the track. That's get the excess rubber off, and especially on a hot day, it can be very important. Earl Datweiler up against Don DeVault here in the second round of top alcohol competition, and that is DeVault's crew chief kind of shaking his head. Al Swanson, he doesn't like something he sees or hears, Brock.
No, he certainly does, and he's concerned, although apparently he's going to let him go. That's Don DeVault, Kentland, Indiana. His crew chief, Al Swanson, the man that put together that 432 cubic inch Keith Black engine, all aluminum, in that dragster. His opponent, Earl Datweiler, Herscher, Illinois, crewed by his son, Todd Datweiler. They qualified it at 6:19. Earlier, Steve had a look at how Earl drives this car.
Now, you would think that a top alcohol dragster like Earl Datweiler's with only 1,700 horsepower would be easier to drive than a top fuel car with a roaring 4,000. No, I don't think so. Primarily because the alcohol cars carry a pair of transmissions. They don't have enough horsepower to pull high gear only. Also, it gets much more interesting in the cockpit for these guys and gals. Without all of that power, they can't just leave from a dead idle like a top fuel car. Earl stages carefully, pumping the brakes, holding the car back. When it's staged, he has to bring the engine up to a screaming 6,000 RPM using that tack needle. Now, when the green comes on, Earl is gone like a rocket, but the car is shaking so hard, he can't see the tack anymore for his shift points. When this light comes on the first time, that tells him go into second gear by pushing down this particular lever. When it lights up again, he pushes the second plunger, gets into high gear for the remainder of the run. Now, the other day, Earl tried something interesting, a pair of the trick new glasses we've talked about that they're supposed to improve your reaction times. Well, remember now, they only see yellow. They don't see red. That's a red light. Earl missed both shift points. Now, he's got 2 choices. Lose the glasses or put a yellow lens in here. And while we're here, we notice this netting. This is not mandatory. What it does is, in case of an upset, the body panel comes off, Earl's legs can't get out of the driver's compartment. That's something every alcohol and top fuel driver ought to look at.
Interesting development there. These guys always thinking, always trying to move ahead, both in terms of performance and safety.
And now you can hear the RPMs come up to that required 6,000. Both drivers looking at their tack needles, and they're away. Datweiler in the far lane. A big advantage. There was indeed something wrong with DeVault's car. Earl Datweiler 6:39. DeVault, who qualified at a 6:09, fell off to a 6:60. Al Swanson was right. It was off song. Stay with us. We'll be back to National Trail Raceway in Columbus, Ohio.
Way outside Columbus, Ohio, for more NHRA Budweiser Sports Nationals action. That is the top alcohol funny car of top runner Pat Austin as they prepare for their round 2 action. But right now, let's go back to round 2 of top alcohol dragster. Steve and Mike Koski getting ready to go, and he is one of the best in the business.
He is, Brock, in the near lane is Koski with the high-tech Oldsmobile engine, 454 cubic inches. His opponent is Tim Baxter with a little more of a traditional approach with the Arius engine of 427 cubic inches. Now, the Arius is a Hemi, not so Koski's motor. It's kind of a pro-stock technology with a trick set of cylinder heads, and with the way the valves are arranged in the heads, Mike Koski gets a weight break from NHRA. The way he's running, I don't know how long that's going to last for the man out of Cuddy, Pennsylvania. And his crew chief, well, Janet Koski. They qualified number 3 at 6.08. Tim Baxter, as we said, carries that big Arius motor, traditional kind of a Hemi that has long ruled this class until the Olds came along. They're out of Lawrence, Kansas, and his brother Bob Baxter is the crew chief on the Jayhawker car. They qualified number 6 at a 6.22. He's going to need to go much quicker than 6.22 if he's going to win this event. I can tell you right now, Brock, I don't care how hot it is.
Absolutely. These cars can poke into the 5s when the weather conditions are perfect. But right now, Baxter versus Koski. Their stage. Oh, great hold shot by Baxter. Here comes Koski. Can he run him down? Yes, gets him in the lights, overpowers him at half track.
A 6.17 second elapsed time for Koski, 215 miles an hour, very close to what we saw Tom Conway run earlier. Dragster is 625, but as you said, just a wink of a starting line advantage made this a closer race than it had to be for Mike Koski. The car in the far lane, definitely off the mark first. Koski in the near lane, he knew that. He can see with his peripheral vision that he's got a fight on his hands, and it didn't take him to about half track to get even and get around. So Mike Koski will advance to the semifinals in the top alcohol dragster category. There you see what about a tenth of a second looks like, well over a car length. And here's something strange. One of the front end weights came off of Koski's car, and his parachute gathered it up and brought it down to the end of the racetrack for it. Bob Fry?
Well, you lost something off the race car there.
Yeah, the weight bar come off. Whoa, I'm gonna lose my glasses. It was a bumpy ride.
Was the weight bar the reason it was a bumpy ride, or is that the bumpy ride the reason the weight bar came off?
Well, when I opened the parachute, the weight bar fell off, and then I drove over top of it, and I was trying to figure out what was under the race car. I couldn't figure it out.
How'd the run feel for you?
Pretty good. I don't know what we ran.
6:17.
6:17? Not too bad for what's going on up there.
Oldsmobile's running pretty good for you this year.
Oh, yeah, running real good. We have a good time with it.
Yeah, he should be happy with that 6:17. That's as good as we have seen so far today in the top alcohol dragster ranks. Well, now it's time for yet another pair, and this will be very interesting. In the near lane is Corey McClanathan, the Mac Attack car. Corey's from California and scored big last year at the Mile High Nationals in Denver, Colorado. That was his first NHRA national event victory. Corey, one of the hot new drivers on the scene from the home of the original Disneyland, Anaheim, California. His crew chief, big smile here, Bob Rogers, they qualified number 2 at a 6:06. And then in round 1, earlier today, they ran up against one of the real unusual cars in the Midwest. Look, front motored, you can see that picture. Ron Boggs and his crew chief brother Steve, they just refused to put the motor behind the driver. This is very much kind of an altered roadster configuration. Now, this was earlier today. McClanathan was in the near lane. Boggs had a gorgeous start. Looked like he might upset the Californian. But no, from behind came McClanathan. But then the wing came off of Boggs' roadster. These things are tough enough to drive on all well. When anything goes wrong, well, they drive you. With no wing and no chute, last year Boggs would have been probably upside down in the sand trap. No longer is there a sand trap. A new extended shutdown area over Refugee Road into Herb White's garden, paved now, so everything was A-OK. Now McClanathan faces one of the real tough veterans from Knoxville, Tennessee, Bill Barney. Now his crew chief, Mike Cooper, wrenched that car to a number 7 qualified spot at a 6:24. And they know they've got to pick up that pace, Brock. They're having a little conversation about that right now.
Well, that power plant behind Barney is a 443 cubic inch Dodge engine. So a variety of power plants in these automobiles, which makes the class really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. You'll find Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles and Donovans and Ariases and Keith Blacks and Mylodons and JP1 motors, you name it. It'll run on alcohol, no question about it. McClanathan has the advantage if you look at the times from the earlier rounds. He had lane choice as well. He's in the near lane, Barney in the far lane as they stage those screaming engines. McClanathan is dead late off the starting line. And he pays the price. Bill Barney, 6:23, defeats McClanathan, 6:18. That young man will be sick about his driving performance. Both of them run 219 miles per hour. In replay, you'll have no problem seeing the car in the far lane leaves first by a long, long ways. In the sport of drag racing, very difficult to overcome that kind of a starting line advantage, Brock.
Absolutely. You could almost measure that on a calendar. A dramatic difference here. As you can see now, Barney opens out that advantage as they head toward the finish line, and McClanathan falls far, far behind. A disappointment, surely, for the young man who ran a lower ET and lost the race.
So that will set up the semifinals in top alcohol dragster competition. It will be Bill Barney, who, with a whole shot, won in the second round over Mike Koski. Koski will have the lane choice, and Tom Conway versus Earl Detweiler. Conway had a bye in the second round. He'll have tough competition in the semis, but he does have lane choice.
They say they pay you drivers the big bucks for what you do on the starting line. You earned your money there. 6:23 beat a 6:18.
All right, great. Car hasn't been running that well. We're trying to do what we can with it, though.
Combination seems to come and go for guys in the sport sometimes. Boy, it's great when you're on top of it, but when it leaves, it can just drive you batty.
Just absolutely. We've been fighting it this weekend. We hope to get it under control.
The one is doing good. This kind of class make your hair fall out.
Not just drivers either, Bob. All right, here's the pit of Vern Moats, one of the top alcohol funny car veterans. I mean, this man's been around about 27 years in the sport of drag racing. Funny car competition next up. Tuned to TNN, because immediately after our coverage here of the NHRA Budweiser Sports Nationals, it's NHRA Today, the weekly magazine show of the sport of championship drag racing. Right now, it's time for us to make a whole lot of tire smoke with the very popular top alcohol funny cars. In the far lane, doing just that spectacular burnout from Gary Rattel. Gary will be up against a very popular Wizard car, owned by Tom Akers and driven by David Sebring. Another gorgeous burnout from the Dodge Daytona bodied machine. As we said, David Sebring of Kent, Ohio drives the car, but for many seasons it was the owner driver, Tom Akers. The car qualified number 8 at 619.
Facing him will be the #1 qualifier, Gary Rattel, Antioch, Tennessee. A beautiful '89 Thunderbird body car wrenched by his brother, Steve Rattel. Earlier, Steve had a look at an interesting component on this very quick car.
In alcohol dragster and funny car racing, compression is everything. And in the Rattel Brothers racing team's case, they start with an 11.5 to 1 piston. Now, that's a lot of compression, but to maintain that kind of cylinder pressure for a full quarter of a mile, you've got to have one heck of a supercharger. In fact, a more powerful supercharger than the nitro cars are allowed to run. Gary Rattel and his brother have kindly field stripped this blower so we can see how it works. These are called the impellers, and these are high helix impellers. The pros are not allowed to use them. High helix means a more radical arc here. And as these two spin against each other, they pump air through the case and into the manifold. Now, imagine that the pros, the nitro cars, spin their superchargers 35% faster than engine speed. The alcohol cars, 60% faster than engine speed. So these impellers are turning at 21,000 RPM. Now, if the efficiency of this blower drops off 5%, it is immediately reflected in the time slip. So what do? They take it apart just like this, and in about 30 minutes' time, they replace all of these Teflon strips. Now, this is what acts as the seal inside the case, and this will have to be done every 2 to 7 runs, depending on the particular supercharger. All in all, when you talk alcohol funny car racing, you're talking supercharger.
You're also talking a lot of money and a lot of technology. As we watch Steve Rattel help his brother get staged. And speaking of brothers, David Sebring beat his little brother Phil in round 1.
Hey, you do what you have to do in this sport, you know. The #1 qualifier in the far lane. Sebring in the near lane. They are ready. Losing traction is Sebring in the near lane, but he gathers it up. Sebring charges back. Sebring beats the #1 qualifier, Gary Rattel, 618 to a 626. But give Rattel some credit as well. He cut almost the perfect light. He was 3 thousandths away, really, from a red light. Watch the car in the far lane. If you want to be a drag racer, that's how you leave the starting line. If you want to be a drag racer, watch the near lane as well. That's how you gather a car up, get off the throttle, squeeze back in just in the nick of time to pull out the victory. Boy, that was some race among these two alcohol funny cars. Great job by both drivers. We told you the competition would be close here at the Budweiser Sports Nationals. Boy, it is.
Hey, Dave, Mom might not have been happy you beat your brother the first round, but it's okay to beat these other guys.
That's right. I won't get a spanking for this one.
I know, but you're pretty close friends with most of the guys running in this eliminator.
Well, that's the problem. You get real close with these guys in this category, and you love to race them, you know, and you just have bragging rights till the next week. I mean, because next week it's somebody else's deal.
Okay, it never quits. We're back to funny car action, alcohol style, as we watch Pat Austin from the state of Washington, one of the very finest in this class, getting ready to go against a local favorite, Steve Evans, Chuck Cheeseman, from right here in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, yeah, Cheeseman has the honor of meeting Pat Austin. Austin is in the enviable position of being big news if he loses. He wins that often out of Tacoma, Washington, and his dad, Walt Austin, is the engine wizard behind this car. A little off in the qualifying pace at 6:13 for that car. Chuck Cheeseman from right here, Columbus, Ohio, the state capital, the home of National Trail Raceway. And like so many drivers, he makes it a real family affair. His wife, Joyce, is his crew chief and helpmate. They qualified number 13. So Austin will be a tough opponent for them, no question. As we see Cheeseman lock down that mandatory roof hatch or escape hatch. They use it. It's the only air conditioning, as U-54 product they have on these cars. So open it up and get some kind of cool air and let the tire smoke out.
Both these cars carrying over 500-inch engines. They're permitted in the funny car alcohol class. 540 inches, as a matter of fact, for Cheeseman's automobile. Monster motors here.
The biggest in all of drag racing. A good start. Austin gets just a little crossed up, drives it back into the center of the lane, and drills Cheeseman with a 6.15 second elapsed time. 229 miles per hour. Boy, that is fast in this kind of humidity. Almost 230 for Pat Austin. Let's take a look one more time, and you'll see that it was a very good start. Actually, you have to give a bit of the nod to Cheeseman right up the mark, the car in the near lane. Just by a wink, he got away first. You saw that smoke out of the pipe, though. That tells you the engine is not running as efficiently as it should. You shouldn't see any smoke with this alcohol fuel. Austin, now by half track, he was kind of saying, see you later, Chucky. Pat Austin, a clean win here in the second round. He'll head to the semifinals of the Budweiser Sports Nationals.
Pat Austin's car's been running extremely well. That time came around with a good run and put a 6:15 up on the board. Pleased with it?
Yeah, that's a good run. It finally left the starting line decent. And once this car leaves the starting line, I think the other half of the track's pretty much known. So everybody knows what it's going to do.
Yeah, if they're not ahead of you at half track, they might as well pull the chute.
I hope it continues that way for the next 2 runs anyway.
The air's changing a little bit. Seems a bit cooler. Are you going to make any difference in what you do to prepare your car?
You know, it's real funny. We're sitting on the stage lanes. The sun goes away, you know, behind the clouds, and then all of a sudden it gets cool. So then you run back and you look at your gauges. You change your jet according to your fuel system. Then all of a sudden the sun comes out again. My dad's running around up there, jets in and out. It's kind of funny. It's tricky, and I think the smart guy's going to win the race.
How smart do you think you can be? How fast do you think it'll go?
I think my dad's proved that, and I think you'll see him get a real low 16 maybe next time. That's what it's going to take to beat Dave Seaman. He's a good driver and a fast car.
Well, I'll tell you what, there is a good driver and there is a fast car. We'll see if he can get that 16 he was talking about as Tom Conway goes to work or continues work on his big Keith Black engine. He'll face Earl Datweiler in the semifinals of Top Alcohol Dragster. Stick with us. We'll be back at Columbus, Ohio.
For more Budweiser Sports Nationals action. I'm Steve Evans along with Rocky Yates and Bob Fry, and we're still in the second round of the tire smokers, the alcohol funny cars. And the man over there in the black car, Shad Wheeler, is really going to have his work cut out for him. He is up against Danny Townsend, the red and white car in the near lane. Danny has won the last 2 NHRA national events in this category. A guy who came out of competition eliminator. Everybody figured to be a long learning curve. It wasn't.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Steve. Danny Townsend, of course, a national champion several times over. Why did you say a couple of races coming in here? There is his crew chief, Dan Mills, who has gotten that car really tuned up. Shad Wheeler from Fredericktown, Ohio, maybe a man of destiny. Got in here in this field as an alternate. And then knocked out Brad Anderson, national champion in the first round. So who's to know how far he can go with Little Thumper, as his race car's called.
Yeah, his times haven't been that good, but his crew chief, Steve Prince, we just saw his picture, is trying to do something about that. Oh, there's a cute little caricature of the Thumper himself. On the side of the alcohol funny car, they're having a lot of fun with that machine. Danny Townsend uses a Thunderbird body, the JP1 motor, another whopper 526 cubic inches. Looking at the, and there's a red light for Shad Wheeler. I think Wheeler felt he just had to gamble if he had any chance against Danny Townsend. Townsend just that dominant in the elapsed time department. Even if Chad hadn't red lighted, he'd have had a tough time competing with a 618 at 226 miles per hour. Let's go to the starting line. Brock is with crew chief Dan Mills.
Well, Dan, a 618, we just saw Austin run a 15, but under the circumstances, you got some work to do, I would imagine.
Yeah, we go back, take a look at the clutch, lean on it maybe just a little bit. We made a few changes that round we picked up from the previous round, and we think we'll be able to cover it on the next round.
We're getting a little cooler here, a little wind coming up. Do you think maybe you can get a little bit into the 10 somewhere?
I don't think so today. I think the altitude with the heat and humidity and the barometer just isn't going to be there.
And a 15 wind?
Somewhere between 12 and 15.
Okay, we'll be watching. Good job.
Thanks.
You know, sometimes I think the cars haven't even reached the finish line, and the crew chiefs already have their brains going. What can I do to make that car quicker? Is it clutch? Is it more blower? Is it more magneto? Always thinking. They talk about onboard computers. Well, those guys have one right between their ears. A couple of great ones here in alcohol funny car competition. The far lane, Vern Moats, been around so long he no longer even lists his age on his entry blank, and I don't blame him, Brock. He's up against another guy who's in his mid-40s, and that is Floyd Corky East in the near lane. Corky with the Trans Am body, 526 cubic inch motor. Vern Moats also exactly the same cubic inches, only using a 1990 Dodge Daytona body. That's Corky we're looking at right here, again with the air conditioning on, Brock.
Well, I'll tell you what, Floyd Corky East, Papillion, Nebraska, just got into this field as an alternate. He was only the 18th qualifier. He and crew chief Leo Zerlin got a 6:27, not so hot. Vern Moats, Des Moines, Iowa, as Steve said, one of the real veterans in this kind of competition. He and his crew chief Del Hoffman, they were only midfield, 11th qualifier. Again, not so strong, a 6:20. And I would imagine, Steve, now that Corky's got some more power into that automobile, that these two cars should be just about equal.
In fact, you can almost throw out those qualifying numbers, Brock. They returned last weekend before the rain came in much better weather conditions. And it's a tribute to all of these cars, guys from Nebraska and Iowa and even the West Coast, either stayed here in Columbus or came back great distances to compete in the Budweiser Sports Nationals. Here we go. Vern Moats, Corky East. Boy, they are matched up. One gorgeous drag race. The Vern Moats crew very relieved to see their win light come on. You talked about these two being virtually even. I'll say a 6:29 wins it for Moats, a 6:30. So close for Corky East. A big speed of 223 miles an hour. Now, the start was virtually even. You can't call it looking at this replay. In fact, you can't call about anything except a little tire smoke off of Vern Moats' car. And that slowed down his ET considerably. Had the clutch been just right in that department, Moats would probably have run a good deal quicker than a 6:29. Look for his crew chief to make that adjustment before they get to the semifinals.
And they will need it, Steve, because they're going to face Danny Townsend. Townsend with a 6:16 versus Moats 6:29. So Danny Townsend obviously with lane choice and with a serious advantage ET-wise. The other pairing, David Sebring against Pat Austin. Pat with a 6:15. He's got quick time so far today.
And in the Bill Barney Top Alcohol Dragster pits, there is a quest for horsepower going on. They face Mike Koski in the semifinal. They've got to run quicker than they did in round number 2 if they're to stay in the Budweiser Sports Nationals. Stick with Brock and I and Bob Fry. We'll be back.
The Sports Nationals Super Comp, and that is based on the concept of running no lower ETs than 8.90 seconds. Earlier, Steve had a look at this special class.
Over the years, a number of devices have been engineered to help the Super Comp driver run that perfect 8.90 elapsed time every time. They fall into two categories, ones that are legal and ones that NHRA has banned. They have banned any kind of infrared device that senses the Christmas tree and causes the car to leave the starting line perfectly every time. That's out of here. Also, stutter boxes that would kill the performance in the middle of the racetrack by interrupting the ignition, causing the engine to sound like it was stuttering. Now, on Mike Hoadley's car, let's see what is legal. First of all, a throttle stop. You see it here on the carburetor, and that knob adjusts it. Now, this is a combination mechanical, electrical. Some of them are vacuum. Now, follow this. On the shifter down here, this is the little solenoid that engages that throttle stop. Now, in low gear, the carburetor is wide open, so it launches as hard as possible. When he moves it into second gear, that starts slowly engaging that throttle stop. Now, this is all legal. Now, secondly, he uses what they call a delay box, and you can see right here, and it's adjustable. Because the driver stages a Super Comp car with the throttle all the way down, if he leaves on the yellow light, chances are he'll red light. So Mike, like many others, engineers a little bit of a delay, about 3 thousandths before the trans brake lets go. These are the things that are legal, and we assume that every car only has these devices, but boys will be boys.
Let's take a look at earlier action in round 4 of Super Comp in this huge field here. Sheldon Gucker, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, went up against Mark Conkle from right here in Etna, Ohio. And Steve, as always, very close competition.
Oh, you bet. Sheldon Gecker is a big name in this category. He was in the far lane, the white and blue car, the Camaro in the near lane of Conkle. And reaction times are everything in Super Comp, and it was Gecker with a much better line, a 4.3 to a 4.6. And with that cushion, he only had to run an 8.95 to beat Conkle, well over the 8.90 limit on Super Comp. At the far end was Bob Fry to talk to Sheldon.
Sheldon, you won this one. A lot of people consider you the killer car in this eliminator. How do you think of yourself?
I'm a beginner at this. I've only done this since the end of last year, and I'm just trying to apply some different technology we've had to a different class. I think the longer wheelbase cars may have an advantage because of the weight and not being in the bald spots in the starting line, if that means anything.
More action in round 4 of Super Comp brought Albert Padron all the way from Los Angeles, California in a beautiful brand new automobile owned by Kathy and Bob Teets. He faced Larry Reimer from Tinley Park, Illinois.
And all of these drivers pretty fortunate, Brock, to have survived to this point when we picked up the action. The field started out with 96 cars in it. In the near lane was the long wheelbase car that Sheldon Gecker said might have an advantage. Well, not here. Albert Padron in that Roadster just handled the Dragster with no problem, winning at 8.92.
Albert Padron all the way from California. You won that one. Do you like this new Roadster?
Oh, I like it a whole lot. It's a real nice piece.
Now, some guys think that the long wheelbase Dragsters may have an advantage. You obviously like the shorter cars.
Oh, yeah. They're a lot more fun to watch.
Are they more fun to drive?
A lot more fun to drive, too.
More contrasting automobiles and styles with Mark Harmon in a Sunman, Indiana. He's got a classic Dragster. He faced Troy Coughlin of right here in Columbus, Ohio, local favorite, in an Oldsmobile Cutlass. Two very interesting vehicles going against each other, Steve, as always, in this kind of competition.
Well, there was a time when no one would have gambled on a short wheelbase car in this eliminator. But boy, now, as Bob Fry told us at the very top of the show, there's tremendous variety. Here was a great race between Coughlin and Harmon, but it was Harmon with a much better reaction time, winning the race at 8.97 seconds. That means with that better reaction time, he looked over, you don't want to run under 8.90. You win by just as much as you absolutely have to. Next up in that round 4 competition was Ed Toulis versus Robert Sellers, and Sellers broke right off the starting line. Toulis had it all his way, clocking only 9.03 and shutting off the speed to just 127 miles per hour. Bob Fry got his impressions of Super Comp at that moment.
They call the car too far gone. This is Ed Toulis, the world's quickest dentist. You won this, you go to the next round, Ed.
Well, this is as far as I've ever gotten at an NHRA national event, so we're pretty excited about it.
It's an interesting combination, the dentist and the drag racing. How'd you get involved?
They have absolutely nothing to do with each other, and that's what I like about it.
All right, still more round 4 action. Steve Cohen all the way from Clearwater, Florida. Dragster-style automobile versus Jeff Bohr, Plymouth, Michigan. That Camaro automobile. 2 cars, again, very, very widely contrasted cars, just like the round before, Steve.
Well, Bohr wouldn't be needing his 500 cubic inch Chevrolet horsepower. He fouled right off the starting line. Cohen won it with the perfect 8.90 elapsed time, a speed of 151 miles per hour. That is ideal Super Comp driving.
There's a diversity of opinion of who might be the toughest Super Comp car in the country. Some say Sheldon Gecker, a lot say Steve Cohen. You had a no light and an 8.90 on the track, so I guess that's 1 vote for Cohen.
Yeah, we need to do it about 3 more times and we'll be in good shape.
It's a tough field of cars here this weekend.
Real tough, plus we got the weather conditions, like Top Fuelers fighting it. We're fighting it just as bad because we got to adjust the car to an 8.90 standard. We're not whoever gets there first. We got to stay on the number, and it makes it tough on us. You get out here one day after rain and it's humid, the next day it's nice, next day it's humid again. It makes it hard to keep the car right.
Well, we had a bye run in round 4. Janice Siegel, another Floridian from Northport, Florida. She ran a single, which moved her into the 5th round in Super Comp.
But rather than taking it easy, Janice went out there to see how quick an elapsed time she could cut and reaction time. Her reaction time was extremely good, and her elapsed time, 8.93, only 300ths over that performance standard of 8.90. So Janice Siegel looked to be very tough at this point in the competition.
All these big, tough guys out there drag racing. There's a lady here that might be able to say something about who wins this race. Janice, you've gone one more round.
Oh, I hope I go all the way. I'm really looking forward to it.
How come you got involved in drag racing?
I was always interested in cars, and then my ex-husband and I, we went racing for a while, and then I bought this Dragster, and now it's what I want to do.
All right, now this is present tense action. Sheldon Gecker up against Mark Harmon in Super Comp round number 5. As the rounds go by, the competition gets tougher. The good levers, the good reaction time cutters survive. Sheldon Gecker, a good example. We'll be seeing Steve Cohen a little later on in this round. These are the best in the United States.
Well, you'd think maybe that Dragster would have a decided advantage over that little old Dodge Daytona over there, but not so in this class, Steve.
Absolutely not, Brock. But it takes tremendous thinking to be successful here, and concentration. You can't run these cars all out, and in some ways, that's harder.
Well, absolutely, because you really, it's just pure instinct to know, and I'm sure the best guys like Gecker understand when they're running right near that 890 mark. And they, as you said earlier, they've taken a lot of the electronic gadgetry out of these automobiles that would permit you to run right on that number. So a lot of just raw racecraft and instinct here. As Harmon red lights in the Dragster, and Sheldon Gecker will move on.
I think the big reputation of Sheldon Gecker worked for him right there. Sheldon, 896, 152 miles per hour. As we look at the start again, you'll want to watch the car over in the near lane, the Dragster. That's Harmon. Now, he may have felt he only had maybe an 899 in his car, or even a 9-second run. And with the starting line advantage, he could still make that work. But now the tree nabbed him, as it always does.
The electronic red light, instant disqualification, no way out. Now, this is Padron versus Steve Cohen, two strong runners. But first, let's go to Bob at the other end.
Well, Sheldon King Kong scared another one.
I think that's all we did is scared them. They laid down a little bit right before the gear change. They're going to have to pick it up for the next round. It's going to be a tough one, I think.
You ran an 896. A 600's a big factor to you?
Big factor in this type of racing is a major factor.
A win is a win, and a red light's as good as running an 890.
Yeah, you're right.
But Sheldon, predictably, not happy with that 896. He wants an 890, an 891. You got to cut it that close to win in this kind of competition. Albert Padron in that gorgeous Bob and Kathy Teets-owned Roadster over in the far lane. They hold it all the way from the left coast, Southern California. Cohen and the Dragster here in the near lane. Steve Cohen and Sheldon Gecker. You heard Bob Price say earlier, they're the big guns of the sport, and Cohen and the Dragster, a foul start. He has eliminated himself. I'll tell you what, though, he'd have been in awful tough against Padron, who got a 4-1 light. That's 100th away from the perfect light. 8.97 elapsed time. He saw the red light. Didn't need to do any more than that.
So that beautiful little Roadster advances while one of the real favorites here, Steve Cohen, goes out right there with that red light.
The Teets family has been in Super Comp since the class was established, and what a fine young driver.
Albert, you're taking this beautiful Roadster to another round. You got to be happy with the car coming all the way from California.
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm just glad to be here, really.
How tough is it to adjust to a brand new race car like this?
A race car like this, it's pretty easy, really. This is a nice car.
What'd you race before this?
86 Oldsmobile Calais, and it's pretty different.
I should say so. Well, it's different. You're in the next round of Super Comp.
And definitely a candidate for best appearing car at anybody's drag race. All right, next up is Ed Toulis versus Janice Siegel, continuing Super Comp round number 5.
Well, we've seen these two before, and both of them ran well. Janice Siegel in that pretty-looking Dragster that she owns herself. She told us that earlier. These are two Dragsters, two similarly engineered automobiles, not the giant contrast that we've seen a little bit earlier.
That's right, and here we go. The RPM's up. Janice Siegel, a foul start. I think there's some jittery drivers out there right now, Brock. The competition is so tense. Janice, well, it doesn't matter what the competition runs. Toulis, he runs 888, but when the other driver fouls, you could run 4 seconds flat, and you're still a survivor in that particular round, and he moves on in the competition.
This is one of the NHRA super classes, as they're called, where the light can get you at both ends. You leave too early, you lose. You get there too soon, you lose at the other end. Both ways, electronics are the enemy of the Super Comp racer.
But I'll tell you, from a cost standpoint, it can't be beat.
Your classic Super Comp car, a rear-engine Chevy Dragster, big block gasoline and carburetors, but certainly nothing traditional about the guy that drives this. Ed Toulis drives the Too Far Gone Dragster, and he's taken another round in Super Comp Eliminator. And this has got to be a guy that's got one of the more interesting occupations. So what do you say, Doctor? You won one more.
I guess that leaves me 2 more to go.
They say winning one of these Eliminator brackets in the Super Comp category is like pulling teeth. Is that more appropriate for you than anybody else?
I'd much rather pull teeth than do this.
I think the guys that are racing you might rather have their teeth pulled than have to race against you. You're really on a roll, Ed.
Well, I hope it stays that way for a little longer. I think we've got down to about 3 cars, so if I can last a couple more, maybe we'll make it to the winner's circle, finally.
Happy with the performance?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the track's great. The car's running good. The driver's kind of up and down, but it's always that way. It's getting to the point where in this type of racing, luck has more and more to do with it every year. And sometimes when you need a good run, you get a good run, and when you don't run so well, you can slide by and win anyhow, and that's how it's been for me so far today. I hope it lasts just a little longer.
Well, the dentist, Ed Toulis, hurry up and adjust his chair. We got to go another round.
All right, and that gives us the pairings for the Super Comp semifinals. It will be the racing dentist, Ed Toulis, against Albert Padron. Padron will have the lane choice in that beautiful pink Roadster. Super Comp semifinal, the other half, well, there's only a quarter, actually. Sheldon Gecker has the bye run by virtue of the quickest elapsed time as compared to 8:90. Well, it looks like they're getting ready for the semifinals of alcohol dragsters. Mike Koski already on the pad. Stay with us from Columbus. Most things now, you can even get drag racing by phone. It's NHRA Now, presented by Castrol. NHRA Now is a 24-hour telephone hotline featuring in-depth coverage of your favorite drivers and events. Check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. We're back at National Trail Raceway. Steve Evans, Brock Yates, and Bob Fry, and there's a lot of thrashing going on in the pits.
It never quits, Steve. Drag racers, that is David Sebring's alcohol funny car being worked on. He will face the formidable Pat Austin in the semifinals. But right now, we got some semifinal action in Top Alcohol Dragster, and that automobile belongs to one of the gunners, Bill Barney, and he is going to face Mike Koski, and these are 2 heavyweights in this kind of competition.
And as dramatically a different approach in the engine department as you could possibly take. Koski, as we talked about before, with the Oldsmobile engine. It's not one of the famous Hemis that became so famous in the sport of drag racing. Bill Barney, on the other hand, has exactly that Hemi combination. And Barney has to either pack a little more weight or a few less cubic inches than Koski. That's the way the rules are written. But they may be rewritten before the season is over as more and more guys prove the competitiveness of the Oldsmobile combination. Barney's not complaining about that. He understands, and he also knows that he's off what he should be running. He told us that earlier, Bob Fry down at the other end. You can bet Mike Koski has reattached those weights on his car. He doesn't want them coming off again and scaring him at the far end.
Well, there's no breakout time in this class. The quicker you go, the better you do. And these guys are looking for ETs around a 6:10. Everybody feels that is what it's going to take to win this competition.
And watching that kind of junk out of the header pipes of Barney's car, I wonder if he's found it. Another wisp of smoke on the starting line. What a start for Bill Barney in the far lane. Can Koski pull it out? Yes. Barney's guys for a minute thought they had won. No, sir. Bouncing to a stop is Mike Koski, who drove around with a 6:14. Bill Barney 6:23. Koski, a big top end charge, 2:24.
Great reaction time on the part of Barney, almost a perfect light, and that's what gave his crew the impression that he'd won the thing, even though he had a considerably slower ET. Koski, as you say, drove right around Barney. Fantastic drag race.
There are people that will tell you that to cut that kind of light, you have to flat be guessing. Maybe so, maybe not.
You ran in the teens this time, and of course you kept all the pieces in their proper places. Makes running a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a lot smoother this way when you don't have to drive over top the pieces.
Haven't any real problems with this car for the last couple of races, have you?
No. It's a good car. It works good. We don't break it too much. Runs fast. These guys make us run faster, though. They're tough.
Well, they think you're pretty tough, too. The Oldsmobile of Mike Koski's been running very strong this year.
Okay, more semifinal action as we see a little handshake between Barney and Mike Koski. Mike Koski, of course, moving on. Let's see what Earl Datweiler can do against the Oklahoman Tom Conway.
Tom Conway, certainly as far as the winning side of the ledger is concerned, has done a lot more of it than Earl Datweiler has on a national event basis. But Datweiler, back in his home region of the National Hot Rod Association, is considered top gun. You know, and NHRA doesn't force the alcohol, dragster, and funny car competitors to travel to all the national events to win the Winston Championship. You're only allowed to run so many national events and so many regional. You can concentrate on the region and just run the national events closest to your home base, or you can go out like Pat Austin does and run lots of national events for more prize money in stiffer competition and maybe lose the Winston Championship, as Austin did last year to Brad Anderson, who pretty much stayed home and ran his WDRS races, they call them the Winston Drag Racing Series. So they don't hold a gun to your head to travel over the country and spin the family jewels.
Well, it makes for great competition, as there is Lynn Conway, Tom's wife and crew chief, guiding him back into the proper position on the starting pad. That, of course, very critical. We want to stay where that rubber's laid down and you get maximum traction.
Driver is not too concerned with these cars overheating. The alcohol fuel runs so cool. Even on a very warm day like this, it's not unusual to see the injectors with frost all over them as the air surges through there and actually forms ice, if you will. So it's Datweiler in the far lane, Conway in the near lane. This could be the best race of the day in this category. Conway owns an automotive shop. Datweiler, a manufacturer's rep. It is a great race. Conway got sideways and can't recover from it. Datweiler up 641, 220 miles an hour. Conway 643, 219. Loss of control spelled loss of the race. Brock Yates is with Earl Datweiler's son Todd, his crew chief, back at the starting line. Brock?
Well, Todd, I'll tell you what, they were all over the racetrack, but you came out, Dad did good.
Yeah, we're winning ugly. The whole day's been like this. We definitely don't have our act together, but let's see what we can do for the finals. So.
Well, you're in the finals. That's what counts.
Yeah, we got a long way to go, though.
Well, keep it up. Good job. Congratulations.
Hey, crew chiefs, write that line down. We're winning ugly. That's a new one from Todd Datweiler. And here's what ugly looks like, I guess, according to Todd.
Well, both these guys were well off what they were hoping to run in terms of ET. And there you see Conway almost cross the center line. He was way out of shape, and that's where the drag race was decided. He never made it up after that, as Datweiler got it straightened up a lot quicker than Tom did and won by almost a half a car length. Still a very close drag race.
Oh, absolutely. Just the littlest thing go wrong in top alcohol dragsters and you're beaten. The final round, we'll see side by side Earl Datweiler and Mike Koski. Koski will have the lane choice. Walt Austin, father of Pat Austin, nervously pacing as the semifinals in the alcohol funny category are just moments away. We'll have it for you when we come back.
Later in the top alcohol dragster final, that is Pennsylvania and Mike Koski's automobile. He is going to face Earl Datweiler. But right now, let's go to Steve Evans, who's over in Manufacturer's Row with a really oddball machine.
So you think you know all the drag racing vehicles, huh? All right, name this car. It's got A-arm suspension on the left-hand side. It's got coil-over front suspension on the right-hand side. Interesting combination. Left rear, we've got ladder bar suspension. Right rear, we've got 4-lane. Not to mention, on the right rear is a slick tire. On the left rear is a treaded tire. What car is it? It isn't a car at all. It's just a demonstration vehicle from one of the chassis companies to show you everything they build. Now, I've unraveled this mystery for you. All other drag racing mysteries will be unraveled in National Dragster. And you only receive the sport's leading news weekly by being a member of the National Hot Rod Association. Of course, you get the pen and the patch and the decal and the rule book. If you call the number on your screen right now, they'll throw in absolutely free a copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 89. So, join up. We're all members here.
All right, these guys are joined up on the starting line. That is Dan Mills, Danny Townsend's crew chief, getting his man lined up. He will go against Vern Motes in the top alcohol funny car semifinals. And two real veterans of this kind of competition, Steve, although Townsend is on a hot streak right now.
Well, Townsend just got a signal from his crew chief. I'll tell you, they're as hard to read as Tommy Lasorda in the Dodgers dugout. I don't know if that was the hit and runs and steal or hit it easy, hit it hard. I'll tell you, you couldn't steal that sign, that's for sure. Vern Motes from Iowa. Danny Townsend, Indiana, in the near lane Thunderbird body automobile.
Well, the signal's simple. Go 1,320 feet as fast as you can. And it looks like Townsend is going to do it without any problems at all. Most big mechanical troubles, and Danny Townsend wins with a good, stout 6:18.
That indeed is strong, and the speed as well at 225 miles per hour. So Townsend goes to the final round as the engine finally shuts off down there. You don't just kill them with an ignition switch. You have to shut the fuel off and burn all of it out of the lines before they finally quiet down. Here's the other half of the semis, the beautiful Wizard car. Tom Akers owns it. David Sebring drives it. In the near lane, the baddest of the bad. From Tacoma, Washington, always the spectacular burnout, Pat Austin.
Well, the Austin team, of course, runs against the best. They run the full national circuit, and they face the finest competition always. Coast to coast, Austin's faced the best week in and week out. And now let's go to Bob Fry with Townsend.
The only thing that might be hotter than the weather right now is the Danny Townsend-driven top alcohol funny car. Found a 6.18 in that round to dispose of Vern Motes, a couple of guys that have met more than once in their racing careers in the Midwest. Townsend's car right now, having won a couple of the national events and the division points race out in Indianapolis, is recognized as one of the toughest cars in the field. Danny is 6.18.
Well, I don't feel that's too bad for conditions right now. I was hoping for a little bit better, but 18, we're in the final again, so we'll just have to go from there.
It really is nice to get on one of these rolls where everything seems to fall into place.
Boy, it is. So many times you think you're doing good and everything just goes wrong, and it just seems like we get on the right side of the bracket now, and everything just kind of falls into place.
Well, it must be in the genes, of course. Your dad was a big racer back in the 40s. Maybe you'll be able to win enough of these, get your picture on magazine, show them to your kids.
I hope so. That'd be great.
There's been plenty of pictures of that man and his race cars and National Dragster and the many magazines that follow the sport of NHRA championship drag racing. Well, I think he is a little greedy if he wants more than a 6.18. That's an awfully good number for the conditions today. I guarantee you, either one of the next two drivers, they'd give you $200 right now for a 6.18. Either Pat Austin or David Sebring. Who will race Danny Townsend in the finals of Alcohol Funny Car? We're about to find out. It's a great race until something goes wrong with the Wizard car, and Pat Austin runs 6:20, 228 miles an hour. I think he'd give you $1,000 for a 6.18 right now, because that cost him lane choice in the finals up against Danny Townsend. Townsend's 6.18 not only put away the competition, but also will allow him to pick the lanes. Sometimes that's a big deal, sometimes it isn't. It just depends on what happens in front of them with other cars and oil and so forth. But you'd rather have it than not have it, that's for sure. Of Danny Townsend, he broke a world record getting back here to start looking at his clutch. That's the area of the machine they're concerned with right now. But you can bet they were watching the race involving Pat Austin and know they have lane choice, and Austin does it. Bob's with Pat.
They say there aren't too many people that can make these top alcohol funny cars run much better than the gang from out in the Northwest. Pat Austin, you come off that semifinal run with a 6.20.
6.20. That ain't good. We just lost lane choice. Huh.
Danny Townsend's going to be tough in that final.
Yeah, he's been a nemesis for us here the last couple of races, but I think we're going to step up and take care of him this time.
Well, it seems to be one of those kind of deals. Always seems to be somebody that's getting in your way. Either you win it or one other guy. This year it's been Townsend.
Yeah, it's been a tough year, and we've we've been running real good, but that is not the case to win races lately, and it's just being consistent, and that's been our problem. And hopefully we'll go back and be consistent and see what we can do.
Boy, Danny Townsend, I hope he heard that interview, Brock. That young man's got blood in his eye.
They are a tough combination, he and his father, Walt. As we go to Super Comp semifinal, and yet this is the Dr. Ed Toulis going against the brand new Roadster from California with Albert Padron on board.
Well, as I said earlier, Kathy and Bob Teets, who own that beautiful Roadster, Bob used to drive it, they've been in this category so long that if they pick this young man, he must be superhuman. I mean, they see him all over the country. Everybody would like to drive their equipment. Well, he must be awfully good, almost machine-like.
Oh, look at this, Steve. He leaves. Dr. Ed Toulis must have lost the handle on the brake or something, because he just launched much too early. Takes a red light, and Padron will move on.
Nah, you're right, Buck. It had to be mechanical. You don't get this far in Super Comp competition and then make what is seemingly a dumb mistake. That was a mechanical failure, no question about it. Padron moves ahead, and watch again here. You can see the Christmas tree on the left. He wasn't even staged properly.
Right.
The car just lunged through. He knew NHRA would say, hey, get it out of here, so he just motored it off the racetrack.
Tough break for him. Let's go to Bob Fry.
We had 3 cars left in Super Comp, 1 full-bodied machine, 1 roadster, and 1 dragster. And now it's down to 2, and the roadster's in the finals, Albert. How'd the run feel?
Feel real good. I think it'll be a good race.
Tell us a little bit about the inside of the car. What type of engine do you have?
It's a small block Chevy, 387 cubic inches, and it's run by a single 4-barrel and a power glide transmission.
It's not a lot of cubic inches to be running 890s.
No, it's pretty small. I think it's pretty impressive.
It is. It's an impressive-looking car, and you're impressive now. You're in the finals. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
I'll tell you, that is a surprise, Brock. Most of them would opt for the big 454 Chevy motor. It'll run 890 easily and last forever. I'll tell you, that's really an accomplishment to get that small block that consistent. All right, and here's a man who doesn't have to worry about anything except getting his car from the starting line to the finish line, Sheldon Gecker. But let's compare his time to Padron's. Padron ran 897 on that magic 890. Gecker, 892 on the 890. All of a sudden, Gecker looms as the favorite when the Super Comp finale comes around.
Going to be mighty interesting, these 2 contrasting automobiles, the little Dodge Daytona versus that beautiful roadster from Los Angeles. There are a lot of ways you can win Super Comp and a lot of ways to lose it. As you can see that Albert Padron has lost lane choice to Sheldon Gecker.
It's interesting. We had 3 different types of cars in that semifinals. Albert and his roadster beat the dragster, and you with the full-body machine. Shows us the diversity of the Super Comp Eliminator.
I think it all has to do with how comfortable individual drivers are in an individual car and the evolution that individual driver went to when he started racing. One guy may have evolved in a dragster, and one guy may have evolved in a roadster, and so on.
It's interesting. Here's a guy with a picture of an ape on the side of his car talking about evolution. Just doesn't seem to fit.
Well, he doesn't have a picture of Adam and Eve on the side of his car, right? All right, they are frantically getting the Pat Austin car ready to face off with their opponent in the Top Alcohol Funny Car final round. And that, of course, will be Danny Townsend.
At the Budweiser Sports Nationals, but first, Steve Evans earlier had a look at yet another sportsman's class of competition.
In addition to the categories we're showing you today, 4 other sportsman eliminators have competed here at the Budweiser Sports Nationals. One of them is Super Gas. It's a lot like Super Comp, only runs on a 990 performance index. And like Super Comp, consistency is the way to the winner's circle. Not an inconsistent combination like this. I mean a steel 1948 Ford Anglia, high center of gravity, short wheelbase. And you want to install a great big Chevrolet engine, right? You talk about a car that on paper couldn't collect anything but the guardrail. Well, nobody told the Eckert brothers. They, through their love of Anglias and good driving, won the 1982 Winston World Championship in Super Gas. They won the TRW Sportsman All-Stars and any other NHRA trophies. And Brock, how did the Eckert brothers do with their Anglia here at the Budweiser Sports Nationals? And while you're at it, who won the other sportsman categories?
Well, Steve, Terry Eckert was eliminated in round 4 by the man you now see in the far lane, Tom Small, who made it to this final round. He faced Jag Coughlin Jr. in that beautiful yellow Corvette as this pair went against each other in the Super Gas final. Remember now, you can't go quicker than 990 in this class, and it appeared that Tom Small was the winner, but he did go quicker than 990, giving the victory to Jag Coughlin Jr. So he takes the title in Super Gas competition. The winner in competition eliminated was Bill Maropoulos. Super Stock victory went to Walt Seiler. And the Stock eliminator went to Donnie Beeler. Pro Stock Bike winner, Paul Gass. Our congratulations to all those sportsmen victors. And now it's back to the Super Comp competition and the man who I think a lot of people think is the favorite here, Steve, and that, of course, is Sheldon Gecker.
Sheldon Gecker certainly has won an awful lot of races in many different NHRA eliminator categories. He's got a lot of savvy. He's 41 years old, but you better not count out the young man in that roadster, the 33-year-old printer from Southern California. That is Albert Padron. Now, several drivers have red-lighted against Padron, and that speaks really highly of what they think he's capable of. Oh, and Sheldon Gecker does likewise, but he didn't mean to. Gecker red lights by 2/1000ths of a second. You can't snap your fingers that quick. The win goes to the roadster at 888, 146 miles an hour. When the other guy red lights, as I said before, you can run as quick as you want. Just forget the 890. The race was over when the red light came on. Now watch Gecker. You may not even be able to tell that he left too soon. It was that close. Just a matter of milliseconds, really.
You have to wonder, Steve, whether or not Padron saw that red light, and if in fact he didn't, he went too quick himself. And in fact, if Gecker had been just a wink slower, he probably could have won the race.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you.
Great Supercom final. Some people say it's as good to be lucky as it is good. And Albert, you're a little bit of both today.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Anytime you can beat Sheldon Gecker, that's a real feather in your cap.
Oh, yeah, it is. He beat me last time we raced, and it makes it was neat to beat him this time.
It's going to make Bob and Kathy pretty happy. They got this brand new car, good driver, and a nice Oscar under your belt.
Oh, yeah, it will. Back in California, they gave us a hard time for bringing a brand new car out here, and this ought to make them feel pretty bad for saying that.
And he'll go back to those critics with that Oscar Bob Fry mentioned. That's what they call the NHRA Championship Eliminator Trophy. Pat Austin thinking, getting ready, psyching himself up for the Alcohol Funny Car final against Danny Townsend.
Funny car drivers ever to strap themselves into one of these machines. Danny Townsend in the near lane, Pat Austin in the far lane. The competition practically even. These two guys have run each other repeatedly, and it's pretty much a toss-up as far as the results are concerned, Steve.
Well, if Danny Townsend wins here, it will be his third NHRA national event consecutively. Danny Townsend has raced for many years. He has a certain maturity that you really wonder if Pat Austin has. Even though he's won a lot of championships, it's just this seasoning over years and years in many different eliminator categories. One thing we know Austin has is just a mental drive. We can see him in the car. We noticed when he talked to Bob Fry after winning in the semis, he really pumped himself up like an athlete in a contact sport.
He sure does. These two guys, as we said earlier, just a toss-up as far as their skill levels are concerned, but Townsend perhaps with a bit more experience as they get ready to go. Top Alcohol Funny Car final. The green light is on, and a great launch by both cars, practically even at mid-track.
Great car race. Great finish to a great car race. Townsend, 6:16 to Austin's quicker 6:15. Danny Townsend won it on driving ability off the line. Brock is with his crew chief, Dan Mills.
Dan, extraordinary. You guys ran strong all day long, but I'll tell you what, these drag races just doesn't get any closer than this.
Now, Pat's an awful good competitor, as is all the other guys in the category. The cars were really close in the qualifying, and we're just excited as we can be. Those Indy cylinder heads, Townsend, Ritchie, and Flake go back home. We're really happy, and we'll see you in Montreal.
Congratulations. Excellent work. And to Danny, too. Thanks.
In replay, I'm not even sure that with the naked eye we can see the difference in these automobiles off the starting line. Townsend in the near lane, according to the numbers, the electronic numbers, was away first by, well, about 1/100th of a second. He ran 100 slower, so all of the bookwork actually works out to a Townsend victory. And we've said it before, maybe 100 times, but thank goodness for electronic finish line judges. No human could possibly call this. Unbelievable race. Danny Townsend, by virtue of a better reaction time of 4.41 to a 4.59, has won the Budweiser Sports Nationals in Top Alcohol Funny Car Racing.
Danny Townsend with a big win in Top Alcohol Funny Car and just continues his unbelievable streak. He is certifiably hot and on a roll right now. Not only did he win the race, but a 6:16 for Danny Townsend beat a 6:15 for Pat Austin. Danny, the car ran well, had a lot of power, and you certainly earned your money as the driver in that race.
Oh, I don't know what to say. 3 races in a row, and to beat Pat 3 times, I consider them guys to be the best there is. It's unbelievable. I thought Baton Rouge was unreal. This is really unbelievable. It's only 3 hours from home. It's great.
I tell you what, you used to run that old roadster and comp eliminated and broke those guys' backs here. You're really starting to become a car that really has to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I didn't really think it would ever happen in the funny cars, but it's really been a great year.
And after all the work, it makes it worth it when you come up and start having a streak like this.
Oh, yeah, the nights you go without sleep, the driving all night and everything, it's just, and you do this and you forget about everything.
And that's what makes drag racing so much fun.
Sure does. It's great.
Beating Pat Austin doesn't hurt either. The Townsend, Richie Flagel, Top Alcohol Funny Car, Danny Townsend wins 3 times now in 1990.
Well, I think Danny was absolutely right, Brock. The real hard work in drag racing is getting from one event to the other, leaving bone tired and going all the way home. But it's a lot easier when you've got the money, the Oscar, and a bunch of points maybe that apply to a Winston Championship. Townsend, he won't mind the drive a bit.
You sure won't. Let's see, as we watch Mike Koski and Earl Datweiler in the Top Alcohol Dragster final. And Mike Koski, who has run so well all day long, he has the lane choice here. And you got to wonder whether or not Detweiler is up to the task here. Koski has been on a roll recently, and he's this race car is just strong. It's just consistent every time he runs the thing.
Well, I think you're quite right there, Brock. Getting Earl Detweiler into the final is a bit of a surprise. Certainly not Mike Koski in this near lane. We see this beautiful rolling camera shot and the shining front wheels. The supercharged Oldsmobile engine. You see the shift buttons on the steering wheel. For Koski, we showed you where they were earlier. For Detweiler, down below the shift column, almost right between his legs. You're right, Detweiler has got to be pleased with this performance no matter what happens here.
Well, he's going to find out whether or not he can better the man from Pennsylvania as they roll into the lights. They're going to activate the pre-stage light, and in a couple of seconds, we're going to have ourselves a great drag race.
Oh, boy, I don't know if they can top the alcohol bodyguards, but they'll sure try. Detweiler, either gambling or a little anxious, leaves a red light. It is over. Mike Koski has won top alcohol dragster. When you look at the numbers, possibly Detweiler was gambling. Mike Koski, 6:14. Detweiler ran it as hard as he could and could only muster a 6:47. He wanted the whole shot and didn't get it. The tree caught him, as it has everybody. An uncommon number of red lights here at the Sports Nationals.
Everybody looking for starting line advantage here in this high heat and humidity. As you can see right here, that is the Mike Koski car in the foreground. There is Detweiler moving just a stare, a wink too quickly, and that is what caught him and took him out of the championship. Let's go to Bob Fry at the other end.
A fitting conclusion to a very tough week of drag racing for Mike Koski. The American Flyer has been at this for quite some time. Comes up with a big win here at Columbus with a 6:14 in the finals.
All right. We ran just as quick as we did all the while, huh? Well, I'm really glad. That's all I can say.
I guess the weather didn't change much during the day, and your performance didn't change much. You just stayed consistent and outran them all.
That's all. We just kept it together. Had a good crew working on it. Kept everything together for me. Never heard apart all week, and just had a good old time.
Kind of makes this worthwhile, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, but it might get worse later on.
Well, it may get hot. It may get hotter, but nobody in the class can get any hotter.
Oh, I doubt that.
Mike Koski with the Oldsmobile, big winner in top alcohol dragster with a 6:14 over red lighting Earl Detweiler.
Hey, we all had a real good time here at the Budweiser Sports Nationals. Austin is Top Gun in Oregon. And pro